Hi guys, I'm Elle and welcome to another video. So today I'm going to be talking about, if I have my talking points up, the idea and the kind of pressure around healing and what it kind of might have been misconstrued as in social media and what it means for different people and stuff like that. So as you can see, I'm outside. I'm in a really nice spot. There's like a stream behind me and I'm sat on this big, I'm sat on a tree pretty much. So hopefully the audio won't be too bad. I'm hoping it won't get too windy or anything. So the first thing I'm going to kind of talk about is the version of healing that is seen a lot in social media. The first thing I kind of want to talk about is a lot of different versions of healing and how they are kind of presented in social media. So there's obviously kind of like spiritual healing from trauma, having a positive mindset change and things like that. And I just want to talk about how they can kind of create an unintended pressure on certain people and almost a false expectation of what healing might be. There are a lot of different versions and a lot of different methods when it comes to healing, and those are shown in social media. And I'm not trying to say that social media presentations of healing and healing techniques are necessarily inaccurate or bad for you to consume. I'm just trying to say that they don't always kind of talk about the work that goes into healing, and yeah, there might be this cool technique that you can use, but will it actually be effective if you don't have the intention and the motivation and the right idea about what you want to do? So things like shadow work, journaling and journal prompts to do with healing and things like that, I think can create almost a kind of pressure, because you think, okay, to heal I have to, get all of my emotions out onto a page, or I have to cry and cleanse it all out of me. Whereas a lot of the time that expectation is entirely inaccurate, because different things work for different people in all aspects of life, and we know that anyway, and that is especially true in personal journeys like healing. And another factor is what you're healing from. I think a lot of people think, oh, I need to get over my traumas, or I need to work through and heal from all of these different things, whereas a lot of the time you might have healed from those things without even realizing about it, even just with time. People say time is a great healer, and I do think that is true. Obviously you might think, oh, I show these actions or I carry out these behaviours that are a direct result from my trauma, but that doesn't mean that you haven't healed from it. It kind of just means that it has set you up for those behaviours, and as long as you notice that, you can make those changes. As long as you are self-aware and you know the behaviours you're showing and you know what you're doing and how you're doing it and how you're saying things, you can make those changes without having to go through this crazy transformative experience and put to rest all of your negative experiences or your trauma. And the trees look like they're waving at me. I think it can create that kind of false expectation that you need to go on this deep personal journey, when a lot of the time you've probably already gone on that journey without even realising it. And that leads on to the point of, if you can go on that journey without realising it, then it's likely you don't need to do this crazy, deep, long-winded process. Obviously that is what some people need. I'm not saying that this isn't gonna be the case for everyone. Obviously I just said that everyone works differently, and that is true. But I think a lot of the presentations of healing online are these deep personal journeys, and that is actually what a lot of people need. But you don't need to share it with the world. If you're consuming that content, you don't need to feel like you need to share your journey with other people the same way other people are doing. Or if you do want to share your journey with other people, you don't need to share it to millions of followers for it to be a valid journey, you know? And that is not obviously to speak negativity on anyone who is sharing their journey with people. It's more the unexpected consequences of different types of content that the creators obviously don't intend, it just might occur. And one last thing I want to talk about in terms of like a healing journey is the push and the narrative of choosing yourself and the expectations that can create and the false idea that can give. It's not to say, again, that choosing yourself isn't a good thing. It's just when it's presented in a way that isn't quite elaborated on, or maybe it's put in a sentence that doesn't quite communicate the right idea that people actually mean when they say that, it can give the audience the wrong idea, and then in turn it can cause the audience to like cut people out and prioritize themselves in situations where that might not necessarily be the right thing to do. So it's not that social media presentations of healing are incorrect, like I said at the beginning. It's more that sometimes they give the wrong idea, and if it's not explained properly, it might be difficult to understand. And that leads me on to the next point of when people show their journeys on social media, they don't always clarify that what works for them might not work for you. Social media stuff and the methods that are presented and the methods that are used on a lot of social media sites do probably work for a lot of people, but that can also lead people to think that if they don't work for them, they're maybe doing something wrong, or they're not doing it right, or it can cause people to stick at methods that aren't actually benefiting them in any way, and that obviously doesn't help anyone in their own journey. And a general message that I kind of want to put out there is that obviously there is no shame in healing. A lot of people think they need to kind of keep it to themselves, or they need to do it a specific way because if they do it the other way it's wrong, and they might not want to publicise that. There is no wrong way to do it, and there's no shame in using a method that works for you, even if you've never seen anyone use it on social media before. If it works for you, it's correct, and if it sits correctly with you in your core and you feel comfortable, then that is all that matters, because again, it is a personal journey. It doesn't necessarily have to be a crazy transformative one, but it is personal. When it's brought down to its very bare bones, it is personal. So moving on from what I said is that it doesn't need to be crazy and transformative. Obviously it will be transformative in the grand scheme of things, but all of that progress is not going to happen overnight, so you probably won't even feel like much is changing. I know that's difficult because it kind of contradicts the thing of like knowing a method works for you, because if the change is happening slowly, how do you know if a method is working? You might just be thinking, oh, it's just taking its time to work. If methods take time, how do you know if they're working or not? I think, again, it's more to do with what you're comfortable with and how it sits in your core and how you feel about using that method and how that method makes you feel, because it is like a step by step. And if you're using a method that feels right for you, but you're taking those steps and you feel like maybe after a few weeks you don't really feel any different, or you don't really feel like there's any positive changes being made, you can always mix it up, because you know, we live and we learn, and like I said, it's a journey. You don't have to have that progress overnight, so it doesn't matter if you have to trial and error it and change things around. Is there a bird up there? No? Okay. And that leads me to another point, is that healing doesn't mean changing who you are and making yourself like easier to live with, or making your personality traits easier to live with. I feel like that's what a lot of people kind of misinterpret it as. People think that I'm upset now, or I feel negative now because of this event or this thing that happened to me. So to feel positive, I need to change in myself rather than focusing on what the root of the problem is. And when it comes to social media, obviously people do document things like therapy, but I think they're not actually spoken about enough, which is surprising because it is kind of, I'm not sure what the word is, like a mainstream method. It's like a very popular thing. So there is no shame in getting professional help. You don't have to go through a journey alone, even if you don't want to share it with people. In one sense, you can share it with people in the sense of that being your method to heal. And obviously you can use multiple methods and you can explore different areas. For example, there might be a method where it's more of a redirection, like a distraction, like I've noticed that this might be a negative behaviour or a negative thinking space or a negative thought process, so I'm not going to give that any power and I'm going to go and watch this TV show that I like. And that can be it. And that is a step in healing, because you're taking a negative and turning it into a positive, or you're taking a thought process and noticing your behaviour and noticing your reaction to it and amending that. But obviously, like I said, that might not work for some people, because a distraction might cause some people to just push that down instead of acknowledging it. Because you might go, oh no, I don't want to think about that, I'm just going to do this. But in reality, you need to acknowledge it and not give it power, like I said, not let it take over that moment and not let yourself get panicky or get upset. But then sometimes getting upset is the right thing to do, because like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you need to like cleanse it out or anything like that. Different things work for different people, and obviously social media is a great starting point for understanding a healing journey and understanding what methods people use and what processes are involved and what different emotions might mean for you. But that's not to say it will always 100% be right for you first go. That is almost never the case, I would say. Obviously I don't have any statistic to back that up, but I would just imagine that it's almost never 100% going to work for the first person who watches one video and puts that into practice, you know? And as much as I don't like to focus on negative too much, I am just going to talk about how harmful some different aspects of that can be. So some methods, such as, say, journaling, like a journal prompt that says, unpack this negative event, it can actually cause some people, I believe, and this is, I didn't say this at the beginning, but this is kind of based off of my own viewing of this content, my own trial and error with, you know, like methods, journaling and yoga and meditation and things like that. Like, so at least in my experience, I feel like if you use the wrong intention, it can almost worsen a person's mental state. Not to say that, oh, I did a journal prompt and now I'm 10 times more miserable than I was before, but more in the sense that if you're unpacking an emotion or event or something negative, it almost makes you sit in that negativity and makes you comfortable in that negativity, and you think that that's healing when you're just reliving or revisiting or rehashing the same events and emotions, which won't be beneficial. So it's more to do with, again, the intention. So yes, maybe you do that journal prompt and it's to do with unpacking that event, but why are you unpacking that event? What are you hoping to learn from it? You need to, I don't want to say focus on the result, because there's the whole thing about, you know, if you focus on the end result, you're going to miss what you're doing right there. But you want to think about what you're hoping to benefit from in all of these things, and if after a few weeks or a few months that isn't occurring and you don't maybe feel like that's the right thing for you, then you can move on to something else. So that's what I mean by it can be misinterpreted, or a social media video telling you which journal prompts to do for healing might not quite communicate the right method in the way that that prompt in itself might not be helpful if you're just doing the prompt without the motivation or intention or end goal. And it's almost creating that kind of like performative idea. I'm doing these journal prompts because it's going to help me heal, but you're just doing it almost like willy-nilly, if that makes sense. And obviously that is no, I don't know what the word might be, it's no disrespect and no like shame, like I said, to anyone who maybe got a misinterpreted idea about those things. It's just that can happen, and there's no shame in that happening. There's no shame in doing something and then maybe realising all along, oh, I didn't have the right motivation or I didn't have the right intent in mind. Again, as long as you are aware of those things and you take them on board and you then implement and adapt coming off of that. And my final point is to do with, I believe it's the law of attraction, where it focuses on your mindset. So if you focus on the negative of healing, you're going to sit in the negative and you're going to bring the negative into your mind. Whereas if you focus on the positive of healing, like I said, the end goal, what you hope to benefit from, that's what you'll work towards. You know, it's very easy in a healing journey to get stuck in a kind of rut or a hard place where you don't really feel like you're moving forward, but you're still so aware of the issue and the negativity. You're stuck in a rough patch and you know that you want to heal and you know that you want to move on, but you're also acutely aware that you're stuck in the negative. It can be very difficult to kind of see a way out of that. And I think that's where you need to try multiple methods and maybe, you know, stream of consciousness, brain dump everything and then pick apart maybe the things that are the biggest issues. So it's very delicate, like I said, in terms of thinking about the negatives without getting stuck in them. I also just wanted to talk about some things that I do that help me, so some activities that help me feel a bit better or have helped me in the past in my own journey that you can take and then adapt and implement, if you'd like, of course, into your own journey. I keep saying journey. My biggest thing that kind of got me started was my journal. I have my journal here in front of me. This is my second one. I had another one before this. Oh, got a little bit of Mother Earth on there. So this is my journal. I have thought about doing like a journal tour video, so maybe that will be in the future. I know some people have different journals for different things, one for negative thoughts, one for you know, like day-to-day updates, but I just track everything in one because that works for me. I would not be able to keep track of multiple different ones. So, you know, I do brain dumps, I do day updates, I unpack things that might have hurt me, but I also just stick in little pictures and make fun little like spreads. Here's a Bob Dylan spread. I practice gratitude. I like doing that. The Little Prince. Hello. So yeah, just have fun with it, explore and figure out what works for you. So journaling, I think, can seem scary for a lot of people because, again, there are a lot of expectations with that. But like I said, have fun. Sometimes using a journal in healing can be using it as an escape and, like I said, as maybe a distraction. Or it can be, if I notice a negative thought process, I can write that down so it's not swirling around in my head. And then being able to see it on the page means you might be able to unpack the process a little bit better and understand yourself just that little bit more. Another thing that I would like to do is colouring. I just think it's fun. Again, it's like a fun redirection for if I'm maybe feeling a bit upset. It's just something to focus on. And now my final point is going to be, if you are feeling upset or if you are feeling negative or if you're in a negative headspace, do not interact with negative media. Do not consume any more negativity if obviously you can avoid it. I know sometimes you're scrolling on TikTok and things come up, but don't listen to a sad playlist and don't watch a sad film, because you're just, like I kind of spoke about before, becoming comfortable in that negativity and letting it sit within you. Obviously you don't have to distract yourself and push it down, like I said, but maybe acknowledge that sadness and find a way to work out of it. Even if the sadness doesn't completely go away, you know, there's just something to think about there. I think a lot of people can make themselves feel a lot worse, even if it's unintentionally, by interacting with their negativity in a non-productive way. And that there is a whole other conversation there, probably about toxic positivity, which is something that I'd be happy to do another discussion about. But I'm trying to kind of keep these concise, which is very difficult because I do go on a lot of tangents. There's just something to think about. Obviously, for everything I say, there is a counter-argument and there is a negative to go with the positive, or vice versa. So like I said, I'm trying to keep these concise, so I can't really explore all of those, but this is yet another social media representation of healing that might not work for you. So just keep in mind what I've said even when watching my own video. And as a last note, I'd just like to say thank you for all of like the comments and things on my first video. I did not expect anyone to see that at all, so that literally was huge to me. I was like crying when I had 20 subscribers. So thank you so much. If there is anything in particular that anyone would prefer that I discuss or would like to see me discuss, obviously please let me know. I would love to do that. And I think that's it. I'm gonna try and, you know, mix it up a bit and do like some vlogs and things, but I think my channel will mainly be these kind of sit down discussion videos, because I think it's really interesting hearing other people's thoughts on these topics the same way that you probably hopefully think it's interesting hearing my thoughts. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a blessed rest of your day. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.